Everybody always loves to predict the next big stars in any sport, especially in Major League Baseball. Whether it's for fantasy baseball, for social media, or for bragging rights amongst your friends, finding the next big star early is always fun. Countless videos are made on this subject every year. In fact, there are some people whose job it is to predict these kinds of things, those people being MLB front offices. Every year, there are always a few players who end up surprising everyone, but more often than not, there are ways to see it coming. If I told you somebody named Jonathan Aranda is the third best hitter in all of Major League Baseball 2 months ago, you probably would have thought I was crazy. But now that is the reality. What if I told you that the Yankees would be fine without Juan Soto because they have Ben Rice, who's been an even better hitter than Soto in the early part of 2025. Ben Rice was one of the worst hitters in all of Major League Baseball in 2024. There are ways to see these coming, believe it or not. What if I told you that there are tools to spot the next Ben Rice or Jonathan Aranda months before it even happens? By the way, most of you watching this aren't subscribed, so if you enjoy the video, consider subscribing. It's completely free and you can always unsubscribe at any time. In order to be considered a breakout, a player first needs to struggle a little in the majors or come out of nowhere from the minor leagues. That was the case for both Jonathan Aranda and Ben Rice before 2025. Aranda signed with the Tampa Bay Rays back in 2015, though he was far from a blue-chip prospect, as he peaked as the Rays' number 5 prospect according to Fangraphs in the 2022 season. He bounced around between AAA and the majors in the 2022, 2023, and 2024 seasons, always crushing AAA pitching but struggling to repeat that same production in the majors, as many players do. In 2024, Aranda put together an okay sample at the major league level. He posted a .234 batting average, .308 on-base percentage, and a .430 slugging percentage last season. That was good for an OPS of .737 and a WRC plus of .113. He was an above-average hitter, but not anything crazy for a first baseman or DH. He was worth just .4 F4 in the 44 games he played. Ben Rice was drafted in the 12th round in the 2021 draft, which obviously doesn't bode well for his prospect status. Despite being a late pick, Rice crushed minor league pitching at every level, posting a career .935 OPS in the minor leagues. Though, many scouts were hesitant to jump on the Rice train too quickly, as he peaked as the Yankees' 31st best prospect in 2024. Scouts believed his dominant performance in the minors was due to him being older than the majority of the players at the level he was playing at. He got called up to the majors in 2024, and it did not go well. Rice was even worse than Aranda last year production-wise. He had a batting average of .171, on base percentage of just .264, and a slugging percentage of .349. He had an OPS below .650 and a WRC plus of .73, meaning he was well below average. He was worth negative .3 F4 in his 50-game sample size in 2024. In 2025, though, both of these players have broken out. Aranda has posted elite offensive numbers here in the beginning of the season. In pretty much the same sample size we saw last season, Aranda has put up a batting average of .339, an on-base percentage of .430, a slugging percentage of .562, an OPS of .992, and a WRC plus of .186. Rice similarly has a triple slash of .254, .355, and .545. He has already hit more home runs this year than he did last year, and he too has been a well above average hitter with a .154 WRC+. If you look at the league's best hitters so far this year, according to WRC+, Aranda finds himself in 3rd place behind only Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. Ben Rice is in 14th, only a few spots down from Aranda. Before the season started, most people would have not seen anything like this coming. 2 relatively mediocre players last year are both in the top 14 hitters 7 weeks into the season. There were some signs last year that something like this could happen, some numbers behind the scenes that pointed to the possibility of a breakout. One of the reasons that we have to take these production stats with a grain of salt is the fact that there's a lot of randomness that goes into them that the hitter can't control. This means that a lot of times, they aren't a perfect measure of a hitter's actual ability. They are especially unreliable in small sample sizes, where the randomness can influence the results even more. The 2 cases we just looked at in Aranda and Rice both had very small samples in the majors before 2025, which means that we need to go deeper than just the surface level production stats. This is where the expected stats come in. Expected batting average and expected slugging percentage represent the same thing that the normal batting average and slugging percentage do, except they use launch angle and exit velocity of a batted ball to calculate the expected outcome instead of what actually happened. These stats are more indicative of a player's skill than the regular versions, as the expected stats remove defense, environmental factors, and other random things from the equation. Hitters are able to influence exit velocity and launch angle, but have no control over what happens to a batted ball once it's put in play. So if we get a good idea of a player's true skill, then we probably will have a better idea of what that player will do in the future and if that player will break out. Now, it is important to note that these stats were not made to be predictive, and that's not really their main purpose. They are, however, better predictors than the actual stats when compared by themselves. That relationship can be seen in these graphs. In the one on the right, each point represents a qualified player's batting average in year 1 versus the batting average in the next year over the past 3 seasons. This is a very weak relationship, meaning that batting average from one season is a poor standalone predictor of next season's average. So in the case of Aranda and Rice, their lower production stats in 2024 probably don't paint the full picture of what's in store for 2025. Compare that to the same graph on the left, but using expected batting average in year 1. It's a better predictor of future results as seen by the R-squared values. When we're trying to predict a breakout, this is very helpful. The same relationship is present with stats like slugging percentage, which is a key component in OPS. When you look at the relationship between actual year 1 and year 2 slugging percentages, it's once again weak compared to its expected counterparts. There are also other expected stats out there like expected weighted on-base average or xWOBA that gives a full picture of a player's expected performance. These stats are often used as predictors to what the future looks like for a player. As I said in the explanation, these weren't made for predictive purposes. They were designed to explain the past. While they are better predictors than the basic stats, we can get even better, and actually, even simpler. The term barreling up the baseball isn't just an old school baseball saying anymore. It actually has statistical meaning now, because a barrel is a real stat. The barrel classification is assigned to batted ball events whose comparable hit types in terms of exit velocity and launch angle have led to a minimum 500 batting average and 1500 slugging percentage since StatCast was implemented in Major League Baseball in 2015. To be barreled, a batted ball requires an exit velocity of at least 98 miles per hour. At that speed, balls struck with a launch angle between 26 and 30 degrees always garner barreled classification. For every mile per hour over 98, the range of launch angles expands. No matter the result of the batted ball, even if it's a fly out or it's a line out, it can still be a barrel as it means the batter made great contact with the ball. From this, we get barrel rate. Barrel rate is basically saying how often a player barrels the ball. This stat is one of the best at measuring a player's true power ability. It's also the first piece of what I call the Big Three, a trio of stats that describe the past that offer the clearest window into future performance. Of course, power isn't everything. The ability to make contact in the first place also matters. Here we can use stats like strikeout rate and whiff rate. Strikeout rate tells us the frequency at which the hitter strikes out, and whiff rate tells us how often a player swings and misses at the pitch. The last of this trio is plate discipline. You could use walk rate to measure the swing decisions of a player, but even better is chase rate. Chase rate tells us how often a player swings at a pitch outside of the zone. When you combine barrel rate, strikeout rate, and chase rate, you get a very accurate picture of a player's true hitting ability. The number one thing that stands out when talking about these big three stats is the fact that they stabilize in a small sample size, meaning you can draw reliable conclusions from them far before stats like batting average and RBIs. Also, I think a huge advantage of these stats is that they're relatively simple. Aside from barrel rate, strikeout rate and chase rate are two of the simplest stats that come out of baseball, pretty much right on the same level as batting average. And sometimes, simple is smarter. So now that we know what to look for when detecting a breakout, let's go back to our subjects of this video, Jonathan Aranda and Ben Rice. Aranda in 2024 had an actual batting average of .234, but his expected batting average was .257. His slugging percentage was .430, but it was expected to be .518, based on the contact he was making. His WOBA was .320, while his expected WOBA was .362. These expected stats that we talked about before definitely say that Aranda is a very good hitter in terms of his ability, regardless of the results that he was getting. So now let's turn to the big three. Aranda in 2024 had a barrel rate of 11.2%. This was 6th in the entire league last year, only behind Kerry Carpenter, another breakout you probably could have predicted using this, Stanton, Soto, Ohtani, and Judge. His strikeout rate and chase rate were a little less eye-opening, but given what kind of power numbers he put up, the fact that these are average to a little above average is amazing. Here are some outs that Aranda made last season. These are well-hit balls that are either great plays by the defense, hit right to somebody, or ended up dying on the warning track. Over time, more of these hard hit balls will start to either get down or get over the wall. Watching Aranda make outs like this and looking deeper into the big three numbers made Aranda a key breakout candidate for the 2025 season, which so far he has delivered. You can see that when comparing his production so far this year compared to what he did last year. His WRC plus increased by over 70 points, he's walking more and striking out less. All of these numbers make me feel that this breakout is real. Now, I'm not sure he'll keep up his production at this level over the rest of the season, but he is definitely a very good hitter. Now let's talk about what looks like the newest Yankees star, Ben Rice. In 2024, his actual batting average was 171, while his expected batting average was 237. His actual slugging percentage was 349, his expected slugging percentage was 462. His WOBA was 269, while his ex-WOBA was 342. The expected numbers tell us that Rice's true ability is pretty good, regardless of the results that he was getting. So let's bring in the big three. He finished 18th in barrel rate last season with 9.6%. That was in between Austin Riley and O'Neal Cruz. Pretty good players to be around when you're talking about barreling up the baseball. In terms of the amount of contact that he made, it was less impressive, but not awful. Power hitters often have high strikeout rates, and Rice's at 27% from last year is not amazing, but not concerning. His chase rate makes up for it, as it was only 20.6%, which was one of the best marks in the league last year. This suggests that he'll be able to work his way on base via the walk at a high level. These numbers, even in small samples, are impressive given the nature of these stats, making him another great breakout candidate. If you compare his results this year to 2024, well, I would call that a breakout. His WRC plus has increased by over 80 points, and as expected, he's already hit more home runs this year than he did last season. The biggest concern with Rice last year was the strikeout rate, and that number has gone down early on this season. Pretty much the same story with Aranda. I think this breakout is real, maybe not to this extent, but definitely I see him being an above average hitter for years to come. So the next time you're playing fantasy baseball or just trying to predict the league's next big breakout, don't get lost in the noise, think smarter, think simpler, and get out ahead of everyone else. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.